Good afternoon, and welcome to the Drive Home Show with myself, Neil Mullen. It's lovely to have you join me today. Today's show is going to focus on a topic that is quite prevalent within education, especially special educational needs at the minute, and it is the fight, an almost relentless fight that parents of disabled children have in accessing the basic requirements for their child's education. So today we're kind of going to explore all about the struggles that parents face from my point of view as a teacher of SEND learners. It would be brilliant to hear other professionals' thoughts and indeed parents of SEND learners. It would be brilliant to hear people's thoughts on that. We're kind of going to look at the historical context of it. So traditionally what has happened and some of the challenges that parents face, not only when their child is in education, but then the difficulties as they transition in adulthood. So that's kind of going to be our focus for the afternoon, and hope you'll really enjoy the show. So over the past 18 months, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, has really put a highlight on this particular topic and this particular issue with certain provision for SEND learners being highlighted, and also struggles of parents being highlighted in terms of just accessing the appropriate educational pathway for their child, in accessing basic services that they may require, even simple things that we should be doing in education, such as getting an educational healthcare plan right, in terms of getting additional support, whether that be additional agencies to work with that particular child. And it really has highlighted in the past 18 months, because of a pandemic and lost learning, that actually there is a major problem within our education system around getting the appropriate and right support to those parents of SEND learners, around how they can access what is essentially a basic right and a basic need of getting the education that is right for them and is appropriate for them. The lockdowns of last year and subsequent knock-on effect of that, in terms of a backload of cases, EHCP reviews being postponed or delayed, has magnified that problem. So I'll not speak in terms of the whole specific part of the country. I'll speak as a whole country, really, in terms of, in this country there is still problems for parents in terms of accessing what is actually needed for their child. Now that stems from, historically, in the 1950s and the 1960s, there was a more traditional view of those with SEND, or those disabled learners, adults, individuals, would often be sent away to live in communities together, and kind of be, that's how they would be. So parents didn't really have much say in what happened to their loved one, in terms of what they would access, what support they would kind of begin. It was kind of more of an instructional approach, in terms of, this is what's going to happen, this is the place that this individual is going to, and this is what's going to happen. Over the last 50, 60 years, and thank God this has happened, that actually we've begun a little bit of a shift, in terms of, we've shifted the attitudes, and if you read many government policies and documents, it does state in there of highlighting the importance of the parent and the importance of including them in the processes of determining what that individual is going to access in terms of their education, in terms of the support that they need. It does say that in policy. Now, where we're struggling in this country is that actually putting that into practice becomes very, very hard and very, very long-winded. So from my experiences as a teacher, and working with parents of send children, send adults, is that majority of parents are really frustrated and sometimes angry because it takes longer. There's more steps. There seems to be more hoops to jump through in order for them to just get basic things that they need or that their child, would like. It takes longer than, say, mainstream, or longer than, say, maybe choosing a school when as a parent you would have your first choice at a reception or a nursery school. The major frustration comes from the fact of there is a lot of increased paperwork. There is a lot of increased meetings, discussions, and it seems at the moment a general feeling from the articles and the research that I've read is that actually we're at a crossroads in terms of we're at a point in time in said education where parents are feeling so frustrated, disenfranchised with the situation and with the processes involved, that actually it's becoming a bit of a battle and a bit of a struggle between parents, local authorities. Some schools, not all schools, some schools are brilliant at trying to assist parents and try to help them as much as they can. But it seems as though we have now a battle between parents of SEND learners and local authorities in terms of simply basic needs of getting what they need for their child, whether that be a specific type of provision, whether that be accesses to different services that they might need, equipment that they might need, involvement with different agencies such as CAMHS. It seems to be a real. We seem to be heading to an inevitable crossroads where we're getting more and more into the it's us and them, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be that as the parent, as the teacher, as the professionals, as the local authorities working with that child, that SEND learner, we should be involving that parent, that carer, whoever it may be, involved with that child as much as we possibly can, and working with them, not against them. Now, there's various different reasons behind why these struggles are happening in terms of complexity of local authorities. There's various issues that go behind decisions and processes and different things like that. A lot of it nowadays is due to funding. Local authorities are under pressure in terms of their budgets, and they are now, in some instances, not wanting to push through EHCP plans because that means additional cost and additional funding. So they will delay the process and put in additional meetings. They'll also challenge certain SEND needs that have been granted in the past by under a different leadership within the local authority, to see if they could potentially save a little bit of money from that pot. They're also under pressure in terms of what services they can provide to parents and those individuals themselves, especially when you look at the transition from education into adulthood You know, lots of local authorities maybe don't have the type of provision that is required, and then they may have to seek that from somewhere else. And we'll touch on the issues of access and provision, you know, away from the parent or the carer themselves, but that has an additional cost as well. There's also a growing undercurrent of, because of these budget pressures, it almost leads to an inevitability of tribunals, of meetings where parents are so frustrated that the process takes so long, that the process is long-winded, that actually, you know, what they're saying about their child, you know, the person that they are speaking on behalf of, is becoming too long-winded, too time-consuming. And in the meantime, while this is happening, those learners' needs are kind of suffering, in terms of, you know, those learners' needs are actually may well not be being met in the provision that they are. That could consequently lead to, some articles that I've read has led to learners' mental health, you know, decreasing. It's also led to learner absenteeism, you know, through bullying, or through bullying, or simply not enjoying that experience of going into school. It can also put a huge strain on the parents and carers themselves, in terms of, parents and carers are so brilliant and so amazing at being the advocate for that individual. You know, some individuals can speak for themselves quite articulately and will bang that drum themselves, but in the main, parents are so resilient and so keen for their child, or, you know, adult, to get the provision that they need, that they will keep going with it. But actually, that in that process, it takes its toll. It's got to take its toll. You know, I was reading on a paper from the Guardian. Some of these processes are taking up to 2 years. So imagine fighting for your child, you know, simply to access a school where they know their needs are going to be met, but it's going to take you 2 years, and you've got to constantly go to meetings, you've got to constantly provide lots of information, you've got to constantly bang the drum for your child. That has got to take its toll. It's got to take a massive toll on your resilience, B, your belief that your child or person that you're speaking on behalf on is going to eventually get what they need to meet their needs. And also, it must take its toll on your belief in the system. Lots of parents that I've met through my various roles have almost become a little bit closed shop, in terms of they only want to work with you so far, because they know from previous experiences how hard it is to get, you know, the things that they basically need for their child, or the person that they're speaking for. So they almost become a little bit closed and a little bit standoffish, because actually they've been promised so many things in the past, and they've taken so long to come to fruition, that actually more harm has been done than actually good from the process. And actually, through my readings for this show, having a look at various different articles and revisiting, you know, the SEND code of practice and different things like that, it's kind of hit me that actually in this country we are good at actually talking about, you know, involving the parent, involving the person in the process, and making it person centered and making it individualized and giving them all the support and helping to meet needs. And it's all really good on paper, but actually, and what's quite shockingly in 2021 is actually what is on paper is not being replicated in practice. It's quite astounding that in 2021 we still have parents that have to take local authorities to tribunals in order to simply get the right provision, the right resources, the right services for their child. You know, that's quite a shocking statement to make in terms of our education system. It really is, and it shook me up a little bit in terms of actually, I'm a parent of a little toddler, 18-month-old, and she is really happy. But it kind of hit to me that if she had a need or a disability, actually, would I be resilient enough? Would I be ready for the process that would start from from a nursery place, age 2 or 3, a specialist one, or if needs be, right the way up until she was in adulthood? You know, when she goes to school, excuse me, when she goes to school, you know, we'll simply fill in a form. We may have a couple of meetings, and then that's it. Well, actually, that process is easy. It's straightforward. Why can it not be the same for a child or an adult with SEND needs? It seems to be that there's various issues. You know, funding. There may be, you know, a location. There may be actually what type of provision is within your area. I think we all understand that, and we all agree that actually that's just something that we need to learn to live with. Whereas actually we've got processes in place that are actually, they're not fit for purpose. They're not what we need. And actually those learners, those parents, those carers should have a system in place that helps them rather than hinders them. Because at the minute, it's not helping them. It's not helping them access the type of provision they need, the services, or even just simply having that positive working relationship with the local authority. It's not benefiting anyone. And as we go forward, how is that gonna, you know, how are those relationships going to fare? Is the process of actually just, you know, helping to meet the needs of SEND learners and helping parents, carers access their simply their needs? Is this process going to get even worse? Is it going to get harder? Do we actually need to stop and think about our processes and think about, you know, yes, more and more learners are coming into education with SEND or additional needs, and yes, there's ever growing financial pressures in specialist provision in mainstream. We understand that, but actually, surely it's better to work with that parent, and yes, the processes may not be 100% great, but actually keep them informed and keep them aware of why certain things are taking this long, or why, you know, this kind of process needs to be carried out. Because at the minute, a lot of that is not explained. It's kind of just, we're holding a meeting here, we're going to hold this tribunal, we need this information, we need that information. And actually, we should really think about putting that individual, but also putting that parent care at the heart of getting those needs right, and actually sitting with them and being honest with them. being honest with them to the point of, look, this is the situation in our local authority. We don't necessarily have the resources. These are the options that we can provide. I think most parents would understand that and rationalise with it. The silence or the lack of communication frustrates the vast majority of parents with SEND learners, where they're not getting that communication on why this process is taking long. They're not getting communication on why their child or adult can't access certain type of provision, or why a local authority is kind of sent them to a particular school without really any justification. I think that needs to be done. But then there's also another issue of, especially from my own personal experience, some of my parents of SEND learners have had SEND needs themselves, and actually they can be overwhelmed by this whole process, and actually they simply want what any other parent would want, and that's for their child, the person that they're advocating for, to be happy and in the right provision for them to be, to enable them to be happy, to enable them to flourish. But actually they're being bombarded with paperwork, bombarded with meetings where essentially people who only have a snapshot of that individual are discussing their child, discussing essentially their right to the right education that they need. And actually that's where this system can even break down further in terms of actually those parents who have SEND themselves can often be totally frustrated, not understand why certain decisions are being made, may not 100% understand the process in terms of how they might need to apply for some services, or how they might need to apply for certain provision. In addition, another interlinked cause is actually financial as well. Some parents are so passionate and so resilient and will keep going for their child or the adult that they're advocating for. But actually, if it starts to go to tribunal and starts to go to court, then that brings an extra element of finances in. I was reading an article by a mum in Cambridge who took her local authority to court over the fact that she didn't believe that her son, who had ADHD, autism, she didn't believe he was in the right educational establishment. He attended a mainstream school. She believed that he would be better based in a more specialist provision, where he would get access to the skills and curriculum that he would really benefit from. So she decided to take the local authority to court. Now that resulted in her taking out a £15,000 loan, which again is really, really shocking to see in terms of 2021. It would take a parent to fight so much for their child, or for the adult that they're representing, that they would spend £15,000 to take a local authority to court to enable them to get simply into the right school that they believe their child will be happy in. That's not an only case. That's quite a few cases where local authorities are taken to tribunal and have cases where parents pay money to take them to court to fight for their child, the person they're advocating for, resulting majority of the time it's about a 90% in the parents' favour. So again, you look at the process, and it personally speaking, for me as a SEND teacher, that's frustrating, because actually we know budgets are tight, we know finances are tight. Why would a local authority let a parent take them to court to then potentially lose all that money, have to pay costs, and then you've still got to find funding again to get that individual into the right place or give them the right services? It seems very, 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 very frustrating, because actually that money could just be simply used to get the individual into the right provision and the right services that they need. It then consequently goes on to that may end there, and it may end in the problem of actually the individuals accessing the right provision, the services, etc. But then there's a further problem, because as we go through the education system, especially special schools, transitions become really, really important, and transitions become vital for many parents and carers. The transition from primary to secondary to tertiary, then into adulthood or whatever type of provision that they're going to go to. So again, it can be, schools can play a really good part, and some schools do extremely well in terms of providing lots of support in that transitioning process, whether the individual is going from one primary school in one area to a different secondary school in another local authority, that can be really good at transitioning, paperwork and provision, and providing local authority with different things. Within local authorities, they play a massive part, and some schools do it really, really well. Others do it less well, but are still there for the learners. But then we've talked about simply accessing the provision, but even changing and transitioning from primary to secondary schools can be a major source of frustration for parents with SEND learners, in terms of straightforward things like, for example, when my daughter will eventually go to school, I know that she will go to my local primary school, and then there's the local secondary school in the same town where I live, and that's fine. She's probably within walking distance. She can do all those things. For a parent of a SEND learner, different things come into play here, and then this can be really frustrating. So parents of SEND learners will typically, not all of them, probably have access to school transport. So then the process begins where they will probably have to file for school transport for their child or the individual that they're advocating for. And depending on where they've gone to primary school, they may have access to school transport. And then if their new secondary school is closer and within a certain mile radius, they may not qualify for school transport. So then they have to go through that process of reapplying for school transport that they were previously accessing before, and then now it's suddenly been taken away. They may also have had access to extended services at their primary school based on their family circumstances, or they may have had an agreement with the school or the local authority that they needed to work, to access out of hours after school clubs or holiday clubs. Then they will still have to work with the school and the local authority to redo that again when they go to secondary school. They also have to think about other things in terms of just little simple things of actually, I'm going to have to, reapply for this. I'm going to have to speak to the local authority about transport. I'm going to have to speak to the local authority about changes in the family circumstances. I may have to speak to the local authority about the EHCP plan. And that's crucial at these transition times of year 6 into year 7 and year 11 into year 12 or in tertiary into in adulthood. It's actually is that EHCP plan got everything that I want in it for the child, or for the child or the adult themselves? Have they had contributions to that EHC plan? And sometimes that can be really frustrating, because some local authorities will provide dates, will provide all the information that the parent may need about this review. Others are less good at it, and that kind of leads on to a different issue, especially transitioning about quality of EHCP plans. I think for the vast majority of people, for those that don't know, an EHCP plan stands for Educational Healthcare Plan, and most SEND learners will have one, or they have a SEND support plan. Now, this Educational Healthcare Plan is pretty much the document you would go to if you're a teacher, professional, and it's got all the information in there that you would need about that individual in terms of their SEND needs, family information, key strengths, areas to work on in terms of different things, so cognition and learn, communication, all sorts of different information in there. Contained within that would also be provision that individual needs, so whether that be they access physio once a day for a physical need, whether they access speech and language communication, whether they access a special school because they need a smaller class number, lots of different things like that. That's basically what an EHCP plan is. Now, the problem comes at transition times, and I've spoken to a few parents about this as well. A lot of their frustration of EHCP plans is that, yes, the teacher is in there, yes, they get a say, and yes, they do get, they do get to see it before it's fully finalised. But essentially, there's a designated EHCP caseworker within the local authority, and they will update that. They will update that every year. They will attend the reviews. They will speak to parents, the school, try and get a whole overview. Now, the problem comes when the quality of that educational healthcare plan, and there's no sort of standard across the board. So from my own personal experience, I've seen great EHCP plans where you get a real snapshot of the individual, and you can see and you get lots of information there, and lots of detail in terms of the provision they need, any barriers. You can get a real feel for parent input within that. And then there's other EHCP plans that are not well written at all. And we've had a text in there saying, yeah, quality and consistency can vary, and it can vary quite wildly. So parents' frustration can come when they feel that their voice is not really being heard in the EHCP plans, or the quality of information is not really there, and that can provide a barrier in terms of they'll really push for it to be changed. They'll really fight for it. They'll challenge it, which is great, which is what we all want and strive to achieve. B, it can also become for parents that are a bit disenfranchised, for parents that have SEND themselves, it can almost become a meeting that they dread to go through every year, that they don't really want to be there, because they might not understand how the document works, or no one's really taught them through it, and they will just. A lot of ECP reviews tend to be lots of information and lots of discussion, where and you only really have about an hour for a meeting, so that can cause barriers where some parents may not attend because they don't feel like they're going to be listened to. They may not understand all the information that's in there. They might actually be that frustrated with the whole system that they don't really want to attend the ECP, don't really believe in it anymore, where actually it can be a really good tool. So that's when it becomes that's when we really start to see frustration in terms of those transition times, and in terms of actually we're putting barriers in the way, and additional frustrations for parents at key times in their parenting role, in their child or adult advocating's life. Transitions generally in life are, humans are not really that open to change. Whereas, actually when we think about it, those with additional needs and with SEND will find change even harder to cope with and manage than ourselves. In the past, I've personally struggled with change quite a lot, but now that I'm a bit older, I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. But actually, those key times when you're moving from a setting that you've probably been there for 5-6 years, then to suddenly change and move. Actually, those processes that parents have to go through in terms of reapplying for school transport, reapplying for services that they need, reapplying for places. We also haven't even got to the additional point of parents may also want to fight in terms of which provision that they go to. So I've worked in a specialist primary provision where one parent did not want their child to go to a feeder specialist secondary environment, and she had to start the process in I think around the December time of the previous year, ending towards year 6. So she had about 6-7 months of meetings, discussions, and various tribunals to go and actually think about what type of provision their child would go to, and the reasons behind that. And she had lots of different meetings and almost had to prepare a little bit of a paperwork trail behind the reasons of why she wanted her child to go to this setting rather than the transition setting that was used. So actually, just speaking to the parent and speaking to the individual themselves where appropriate should become the main thing in this process, but very often it doesn't. So actually, in terms of the policy, we look in the code of practice, we look at you can look at various special schools, mainstream schools. It's all about putting the individual first, meeting their needs. Well, actually, the process doesn't match up to the policy. So the policy in the practice doesn't match up, because actually parents have to jump through quite a lot of hoops. They have to do an awful lot in terms of justifying their reasons why. They also have to go through lots of meetings with people who are probably purely making a decision not based on the individual, but based on based on other decisions around that individual, whether that be funding, whether that be available placements, whether that be, you know, enough services, enough, you know, enough physio, speech and language therapists being available, but not actually focusing on their needs. And actually, we can, in the second half of the show, we're gonna touch on it a little bit further in terms of actually in this country we're now going towards SEND learners almost accessing provision that is probably, some may argue, is appropriate for them, some may argue it might not be, but some of those provisions are now out of their local authority, and some of those individuals are actually being moved away from families, or they have to travel significant distances to access provision. Now, in the second half of the show, we're kind of gonna look into that a little bit more. So please do text in if you've got any thoughts on that. We're kind of going to focus on the parents and the carers and the people involved with that particular individual, how they manage and deal with that, and also the implications going forward from a local authority point of view, from a teacher point of view, of sending learners to access specific provisions outside of their local authority, because it's becoming more and more prevalent across the board in terms of, you know, there's a lot more learners who have profound multiple complex learning disabilities being moved to provision, you know, 25 plus outside of their local authority. There is also a lot more SEND learners who have SEMH diagnosis being, you know, sent to provisions outside of their local authority and being, you know, sent, you know, via transport, quite long distances, but then also cost implications. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in the second half. So if you have any thoughts on that, please do text in. Hope you're enjoying the show as well. So we'll stop now for the news and a couple of adverts, and I'll see you in the second half.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. In Scotland, the Education Secretary, Shirley-Ann Somerville, has announced that £50 million is to be spent recruiting 1,000 new teachers and 500 support assistants within the next academic year to support the country's COVID-19 education recovery. Ms Somerville said, "Our vision for COVID recovery and our priorities for Scottish education remain unchanged. Recruiting more permanent staff will be one of the cornerstones of recovery, alongside the health and well-being of pupils and staff, intensified support for reducing inequality, and enabling the highest quality of learning and teaching. The £50 million funding will allow councils to recruit more teachers and pupil support assistants next year. Looking further ahead, the additional £65 million annual funding delivered as part of the local government settlement will support councils to recruit these additional staff on permanent contracts. COSLA spokeswoman for Resources, Councillor Gail McGregor, says this funding will help councils give children the best education possible, but adds that more still needs to be done to address wider issues with recruiting teachers. Students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will receive their A-level and GCSE results this week. The system for deciding A-level and GCSE results this year has been defended strongly by Ofqual. Simon Levis, the interim chief regulator for Ofqual, told the BBC the watchdog had wanted to create a system where every student was given a fair chance to show what they can do. He said, I am very confident that when they get their grades on Tuesday and Thursday this week, they'll be able to feel satisfied that that's happened. Sir Keith Starmer, Labour leader, warned chaos and incompetence in government has created extra stress for those awaiting their results. He said, it frustrates me immensely that this big moment in so many people's lives is being risked by the chaos and incompetence at the top of this government. Young people and our dedicated education staff have worked incredibly hard, but they have been let down time and time again by Boris Johnson's failure to stand up for their futures. The Department for Education said a rigorous system to ensure grades are fair has been put in place. This has been your daily education news briefing.
Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 50 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, ESHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.creativeresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using discount code TT Radio. Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery box is just a little treat time to have every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TT Radio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club.
Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence, how to deal with difficult colleagues, how to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment, and how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 readers to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
And welcome back to the Drive Home Show with me, Neil Muller. So just in case you missed the first half, we have been discussing this week the frustrations and the struggles that SEND learners have with the process and the various things that they need to go through to actually just merely get the the provision, the services that they need for their child. And in the first half, we discussed some of those things. In the second half, we're going to kind of discuss a little bit of the growing nature within our country of sending various different needs of learner to different provisions outside of a local authority. But just first, while the news was on, was flicking through various things, and again another frustration that is on Twitter, mainly by parents of SEND learners. Again, seems to be not really an educational thing, but more of a EHCP kind of thing, because it comes under the care. It's still a frustration for some parents now that they are still not able to access a COVID vaccine for their child who has a disability or who has a SEND need. Just looking there was, there's about 3 or 4 parents on a feed that have actually said that they have spoken to their doctors, GPs, and have been told that things have changed, which is again really shocking. I think if any of us had our children and they had a right to access something, and then all of a sudden that not happen, it's it almost seems to be that it almost seems that barriers are put in place for those with SEND, and really we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be doing that. We should actually be breaking down those barriers and almost giving those people the tools to actually go on and to flourish and actually help get them just what is a basic need. If I think back to my own education, primary school, secondary school, I love my time at school, and I really enjoyed it. I felt happy there. I learned lots of new things. So I'm trying to imagine myself if I had additional needs that I needed support or provision for, and then I wasn't able to access them, and then I had to go through quite a lot of things just to access them and to be happy and to feel safe and to enjoy my education. That's what are we doing in this country? Where are we going with it? It just beggars belief, really. And that kind of moves on quite swiftly into the next part of the show, where more and more local authorities may not have the provision for certain needs. They may not have suitable placement, or a parent carer may have an additional thoughts on where their child is going to attend education. So there is a growing trend of local authorities almost subcontracting to other provision outside of their local authority, whether that be for education in terms of going to school, college, whether that be for education and care. So they would attend a specific school, and if a school had a care home attached to it, they would go there. And then also for other SEND learners, there is a growing trend of actually sending quite complex, profound and multiple learning disabilities individuals to different provision outside of the local authority. Sometimes this is done because local authorities purely don't have that provision within their defined area. So, for example, the local authority that I worked in one time didn't have any provision for, at the time, didn't have any provision for SEMH students, quite complex SEMH students. So they would send those learners to a provision in the next local authority just across like the boundary line, but they would pay for that. They would pay for those learners to go there because that was the provision that they needed. That was the best provision available. As it wasn't in their local authority, they essentially had to subcontract and pay the next local authority or school or provider, the fee that they commanded. That is happening, more and more in terms of depending on locality. Local authorities are starting to make more of an effort to have the different types of provision within their local authority, so that they can essentially save money and not have to send these learners into different local authorities. The issue becomes when a parent or a carer would like a learner to go to that specific provision outside of their local authority, and that becomes an even bigger struggle because it is essentially comes down to money. It doesn't come down to learn a need, really. It comes down to actually who can kind of justify the point of view. Is it the parent saying that actually this is the best provision for my child, my adult that I'm advocating for, or is it the council saying, look, we've got this similar type provision we feel would be equally as good, and we want to save the money, and that becomes 9 times out of 10 tribunals where there will be legal proceedings in terms of that. Now, what we've discussed in the past about funding, and local authorities are keen to minimise, spend in terms of their SEND budget, because they will have massive amounts of costs in terms of simply providing provision, providing resources for provision, providing there's other costs associated, like EHCP plans need to be written up by a caseworker, they need employing, there needs to be SEND workers, there need to be lots of different costs involved within the local authority, and they're keen to minimise that. But there's still times where individual SEND learners are moved into a different local authority because the provision is just needed there, or it happens to be a better type of provision for that specific learner's needs in that different local authority. And this is where costs can run quite high. I was looking at a report the other day that depending on SEND learners' needs, you are looking anywhere between £30,000 to £100,000 per year for a SEND learner to go to a provision outside of their local authority. That's purely fees to access the provision. You're not talking about school transport, which can again be really, really expensive. That same article had school transport at anywhere between £250 to £1,000 a week, depending on how far that learner is travelling. And some learners are travelling sometimes, close to an hour from where they live to access a provision. Now, that may be well and good in terms of the parent is happy, the individual is happy themselves, but actually sometimes it may not be the right type of provision, and local authorities are spending quite a lot of amount of money on that specific individual and school transport. So when it does break down, then the issue becomes of, well, there was, that learner's being accessed and provision outside of the local authority. The local authority may have new provision, but it needs agreement, especially from the parents and from the learner themselves where appropriate. So actually, costs can escalate quite quickly in terms of an individual's case, but actually an individual's case can be really complex and fast changing, especially as they go through the transitions from primary to secondary. It may be that a specific learner may need 2 or 3 different types of provision to find out the one that is appropriate for them, or find out the one that is the best for them, or they may move local authorities and need a completely different new type of provision to access. So the pitch is ever changing in terms of that. But the picture changes dramatically when SEND learners reach a critical age of 16 to 25. EHCP plans are from when they're born and can last until 25. Now, normally EHCP plans tend to be closed down, or tend to be reviewed or kind of amended as learners get from 16 probably to about 21, 22, maybe even 23. It tends to be that those learners where possible will go on to further education, will go on to part-time or full-time paid employment. But then comes an issue of, especially for local authorities, where SEND learners' needs that are that complex, such as those with profound multiple learning disabilities, those with severe and complex autism, those learners with severe learning difficulties that may not be able to access further education, that may not be able to access full-time and part-time paid employment. That's when it can become quite a complex and frustrating issue for SEND parents. A couple of weeks back, I had Joanna Grace on, who was a great advocate for those who have been diagnosed with profound multiple learning disabilities, and she has put some research out there that actually more and more profound multiple learning disabilities individuals are kind of being put into provisions outside of their local authority, miles away from parents and carers, because there's simply either no places available within their local authority, or the type of provision doesn't exist within their local area. And that is not only a frustration, but it's a massive strain and a massive pressure on families of individuals who who have been such a passionate, resilient and strong advocate for their child, to be still having to bang the drum at that age where they've entered the education system, they've now left the education system and have transitioned into adulthood, and because provision is not there, they've simply been moved away, rightly or wrongly, and vast majority of the time it's based not on their need, it's based on purely financial reasons. And that actually, again, going back to the point that we've made throughout the show of actually we should be putting families, we should be putting individuals, we should be putting parents, carers at the heart of EHCP plans, at the heart of any provision that we're offering. It's far from doing that. It's actually almost being the total opposite and taking that completely away. It's not helping the the individual themselves because they're taken away from that family environment, or not being able to see the family as regularly. It's a major strain on the family themselves because actually they want what's best for their child or adult that they're advocating for, but actually they don't have much say in it anymore. And as that EHCP plan is kind of ended, it then becomes into the realm of adult care, and that's where it kind of breaks down, because parents have had to fight and fight and fight and fight, and then they get adult care where the fight changes, but they still have to go through them processes. They still have to go through the meetings. They still have to go through the discussions, the realities of what provision is open to that specific child, that specific individual. And then the fight kind of carries on, but with a less stronger voice coming through it, because they've had support from professionals coming and helping them, assisting them. So schools, colleges, sixth forms, maybe adult daycare centres have been able to help them to a point. They've had almost a network around them to help and assist wherever they can, and then they get adult care, and it's just themselves, and that is a major frustration, especially for some of the parents that I talk to. My role is working with SEND adults, and that support and that individualized approach, and that listening to the parents and to the carers about their child, about their child, their adult that's going into the big bad world, is kind of not really listened to as much as the parent would want it to be. It's almost of, we'll listen to you, we'll identify the needs, we'll find the best available provision, the best available service, and if it's not here, then that's all we can offer. And it's a breakdown of the process within our country. It seems that it's not just an issue specific to one region. It seems that it's widespread throughout England. Haven't really looked at Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland, but actually all the policy is saying one thing. In reality, in practice, it's showing another. And where do we go from here? Because actually, if we look towards the future, there is probably going to be more learners with SEND needs as we go through future. Thanks to medicine, thanks to increased diagnosis of needs. Thanks to more specialist provisions being available for demand. Are these processes going to change? Are they actually going to get better, or are we going to continue to follow the same pattern, the same processes where parents feel so frustrated and so disenfranchised and so worn down by simply trying to get what their child needs? Is this process just going to carry on, or actually do we need to identify it as a source for change? And in my opinion, I think we do. We need to actually think about the failings of this process and revisit the policy and how we can turn that policy into practice. So yes, we want the individual to be at the forefront of all we do. Of course we do. That's whenever we work with SEND learners, their parents or carers, any other professionals, it's that individual and their needs and how we can help. So the individuals where they can need to be at the forefront of it, and we need to get their views of what provision they want, where they would like to go, what things, services do they need. Again, similarly with the parents, in combination with the learner, if possible, or if the parents are the advocate for that learner, then yeah, we need to speak with them and kind of get their thoughts. Now, I'm no fool, and it's actually got to be, we've got to look at things from both angles. There is going to be funding pressures as we go forward. There is going to be increased pressure from, on councils, on local authorities, on their budgets to help with SEND learners. There's going to be increased pressures on special schools, mainstream schools budgets to help those learners too. That's the reality that we've got. But the reality that we've got is that we need to be open and honest with the parent and caregiver and the learner themselves of actually, this is the situation, this is why, this is informing our decision making, this is why we are, talking about this type of provision with you rather than this one, because this one is, this costs this much, and it's going to cost us quite a lot of money to send them there. Or actually, we're not using that provision outside the local authority, we're taking it in-house, and we believe in this, and these are the reasons why. And I think that's possibly the way to go. We need to think about, actually, what is it that we're doing, and why are we doing it? And the why is, from me working as a teacher of SEND and other professionals and local authorities and councils, it should be, we're working for that individual. We're working for that individual who has an additional need or has SEND needs, and we're working for them because we want the best for them. And actually, the process at the minute is not lending itself to allow us to do that. The process and the chain from local authority to the school or provision, to the parent, to the learner, to the teacher, is kind of out of sync. There's no real thought or planning put in place for actually, if a learner is first identified all the way, down at nursery reception level, is having this need, has been shown around this provision, that's the best provision for them, then why not work with the school, with the teacher, with the parent, and kind of all come together? Whereas parents are kind of put out on their own and left to fight for themselves, where if we made it all joined together and all more joined up, then potentially we've got a better fighting chance of finding the right provision for that right learner. And I think that's kind of the way that we need to go with it. We definitely need to go more down that route of, we need to be thinking more longer term, more proactively with this whole process, and working with the parent, not against them. And that's personally what I think should be happening with that. Whether or not it does remains to be seen, but that's what should be happening, and kind of isn't at the moment. So that's kind of my thoughts on the whole, from my perspective, on learners and their parents, SEND learners and their parents' struggles within the education system. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that. So if you'd like to text in, that would be great. If not, then you can tweet me at nmullen 1988, or or Teach Talk Radio as well. Teach TT Radio 21. Reply there. Give me your thoughts on it. That would be really, really great. It is a subject that has kind of really kind of affected me a little bit in terms of reading quite heavily for this show and getting a bit of background, increased background to it. A lot of the articles are not positive. It's a lot of negativity out there in terms of parents and their struggles that they are feeling, and yeah. But as it's the summer holidays, and as it's the 6 weeks, and we should be full of positivity, we're going to kind of end with a bit of hopeful, positive note in that as we go into the new year, it's an opportunity for everyone to help with this process. Now, me as a teacher of SEND, I can't really change the whole local authority system of England. You know, I would have a good go, but I'm unable to do that. You know, so the challenge for me next year going forward is how can I support the parents, the carers, the individuals themselves to help with that process in terms of accessing the provision, services, or their next steps as best as I can. And through reading the articles and through going back through my own personal experiences, I've come up with a bit of a 3-point plan. And the first plan is when I go back in September to teach my 16 and 25-year-old SEND learners, is I'm really going to invest in quite a bit of time to get to know the parents and carers and the individuals themselves, and kind of see where they are in that snapshot of September 2021. You know, what they felt has gone really well, what they felt hasn't gone so well, and what they almost need going forward. You know, whether that be from parent point of view, whether that be from the learner point of view, or in combination. So I'm going to invest quite a bit of time in September to get to know that. Step number 2 is throughout my course that I'll run for the year with my learners, is that I'm going to make it my point that every term, so we've got 3 of them, we run similar to school holidays. Every term, I'm going to attempt, in tandem with the learner, in tandem with the parent and carer, all 3 of us, like a little triangle of accessing something, accessing a service, accessing a new provision, something new that they have wanted or have needed to do. We're going to attempt to do that once per term. So for some of my learners, some of my learners are not great independent travellers, so a lot of them are a bit reluctant to do that, and therefore have never applied for their bus pass, which they're entitled to. So a simple one could be working with the learner to apply for their bus pass, to access the service that they are able and quite rightly should be doing so. So that's one thing that we can do, an example of that. Another example is, you know, working with my learners to access some work experience that they may never have thought previously possible. It may be, you know, signing themselves up to the local library to go and access, you know, services in there, so books, the internet, different type of things. Helping a learner simply by, you know, helping them fill in a gym membership form, or helping them to access a social or a sports club. Something as simple as that can help that process along, and can help that parent to feel like their ultimate process of, you know, AHCP reviews, accessing funding, accessing services through the local authority, by me doing that, I'm helping to chip away. I'm helping to kind of keep that parent, keep that learner engaged, and actually see that actually there can be little bits of change that can help, and they can help along with that process. I can't change the bigger things around funding a local authority, about the processes of EHCP. I can't really affect that. But what I can affect is those day-to-day things that SEND learner and their parent carer may value. So by investing a bit of my time to help them, access a bus pass, may allow that parent carer and the individual to travel outside of, course time. It may allow that learner to feel a little bit more confident to go and travel to new places and see new experiences that they previously may have not done. So I kind of chip away at that. And then the third thing is, I'm kind of going to make a point of developing an even stronger relationship with my local authority caseworker. And by doing that, I'm helping to get a little bit more knowledge of the aims, the objectives, and the pressures that person is under, and how I can work with them, and how I can assist in any way to get the best for my learners and their parents and carers. So almost a little bit like I was saying about the solution to the problem of becoming more joined up, creating that triangular approach. It almost then becomes I'm almost taking it on myself to do that approach myself with the local authority, just with me. Now, further on down the line, it would be great if we could get some sort of little discussion group, little, school, college, sixth form, adult provision kind of parent forum where they can come together and they can discuss their views. Now, there is some that go ahead throughout the country, and they are really valuable for parents to share their experiences and share how they felt during the processes and any hints or tips. But they're very few and far between. And actually, we could create a parent and professional one that comes together, and parents can share their grievances, share their struggles, and professionals can kind of, work with the parents, work with the local authority to kind of almost be the mediator between the two, and kind of think about, this is what the parents asking for, this is what the local authorities got available to them under the pressures that they've got. How can we then work together to get to a amicable solution? Really, I think that's kind of where we're at now. What I want to do is I'm going to do those three things. So it's investing the time in the parent and the learner at the beginning of my course in September to get to know what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, really think about what needs they have and how is there any way that we can help meet those needs. Two, it's doing that one thing a term where we're gonna provide them with the tools to access a service or to do something that really means a lot to them. So whether that be, applying for funding, applying for a bus pass, whether that be, going and gaining a little bit of work experience, whether that be visiting a new place on some transport, accessing community groups, leisure centres, libraries, different things like that. So can we help with that process? Can we help with that learner, but also their parent to feel like that they are, getting more and more support and help, and actually that we can chip away we can help meet the learner's needs. And yes, that those bigger processes are there, but how can we help with the day-to-day stuff that might just, you know, help to meet those needs a little bit more practically, and then the bigger stuff I can still kind of help with, but just in a slightly different way. Then thirdly, working with the caseworker a lot more closely and understanding what their aims are, what their objectives are, and what kind of different things we can do to help with that. And that really is starting in September, working with that caseworker, but really working with them towards the end of my course when the learners will go on to next steps, and kind of understanding, you know, what provision is out there, and actually working with the learner and the parent to say, these are the types of provisions that we've got. What would you like to explore? What would you like to look at? What do you think is going to be best for you? Or what do you think is going to be best for your, you know, child or adult that you're advocating for? And that is kind of the only way that I can see that we can chip away at these processes. We can chip away at different things. You know, as professionals, we don't really have that ability at the top end to change as much as we would like to. So how can we change, and how can we improve things at the bottom level? That's personally how I'm going to do it. I'd love to know your thoughts. So I know we're running out of time, but you can always text in, you can always tweet at TT Radio 21 or at nmullen 1988. Your thoughts, I'd love to hear them. As we are coming to the end of the show, I've loved talking to you today, and have loved discussing these topics. As we go forward in the next few weeks, if there's any topics that you would like to or you would like me to talk about, or you would like to ring in and discuss, then that would be great. Again, if you tweet at nmullen 1988 or at TT Radio 21, that would be great to know some topics that you would like to discuss or like me to waffle on about. That would be great. I do have a couple of ideas going forward with a few special guests, but as it's the summer, those guests are enjoying a well-deserved break, so those guests won't be until September time. Next week will be a normal show, and I'll put out the details about that sometime next week. The following week I am on holiday, so there'll be no show then, so we'll miss a week, and then hopefully I'll be back at the end of August, beginning of September, with another show then. Until then, enjoy the holidays. Hope you have a relaxing end of the week, and enjoy the next shows that are coming up on TT Radio. We've got a couple of debut shows coming up at 6 and 8, so enjoy those, and I will see you next week. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye bye for now.